go.
We're back. We're going?
We're live.
We're live. Okay, we are live. Welcome to another week of Stand Up Explained. We are coming to you from Denver and Portland. I am Brant Tobler.
I am Andrew Slater.
And today we are going to discuss, should you acknowledge the crowd when you're bombing? What do you want to call it?
I think it's, should you acknowledge it when you're bombing?
Yeah.
Should you let them see you sweat?
Yes.
You know?
Should you acknowledge that you're bombing? Okay. Yeah. I'm excited to hear your point of view on this. I'll let you lead us.
Okay. I'll give both sides of it, and then maybe we figure out where we are, because I don't even know if I really believe, but what I think about it. But basically, everybody doing stand-up, you come to a point where you go, this crowd sucks, or like, man, my jokes suck, or like, I just don't have it to whatever. And you're just not feeling it from the audience like you expected to. Right. So then at that point, you've really got like two choices. You can either just soldier on and act as if, project confidence, strength, hope that just by like being cool under pressure, they'll come around eventually, or just do the rest of your set and never really acknowledge it. Never let them know that you think that you're bombing. That's like one way. The other way is to just go, what's wrong with you people? What's wrong with everyone? What happened? Where did I lose you? You've heard it a million different ways. Every comic's got a different way. Like, oh, were there a bunch of people from the convention here tonight that doesn't like my jokes or whatever?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That stupid thing. So like that way people would say, you could make the argument, oh, you're being like present. You're being in the moment. They're all thinking you're bombing. I'm thinking I'm bombing. If nobody says anything, nobody breaks attention, and then there's no way out of it, right?
Yeah.
But then the other side of that would be like, if you do that too much, or if you do it when the crowd doesn't really think you're bombing, you've kind of created a situation where you're gonna bomb, where they actually thought that you were doing fine, but then you got all mad, or you looked nervous or whatever, and they're like, oh, I guess that guy's bombing. I guess he stinks.
Yeah, that's I'm glad we picked this topic, because there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I do it a lot of ways, because it is a lot of times an easy laugh when I'm struggling to go, oh man, you guys are not enjoying this at all.
Right.
Like you guys hate this new stuff, or wow, that joke. And then they'll laugh, and then you can acknowledge it like that. Now the one, and I think that's a good way to do it. And I've had better success with that. The mistake I make that I'm trying not to do is when I yell at the crowd, when I go, oh, you guys are the worst. You guys, I have this habit of, and it's the truth, I don't know if we talked about it on here before, but I have this habit of going on this rant, especially when I do the South Club here in Denver, which I'm headlining tomorrow. Shout out to me. So I'll probably fuck this up, but it's a more high-end customers, and they're very rich and very white, not much diversity. So if you tell any jokes about another race or something, and you're used to getting laughs at like a younger club, they tense up. And then I sometimes get mad at them. And then I go on this rant about, this is going to blow your guys' minds, but check this out. I want you to take this. I want you to understand this. This is the only business in the world where you don't want rich white people as customers. But it's like true. I really do. I think it might be a topic for another episode, but it is ideally for me that the crowds I struggle with the most are the rich, white, old people, which blows my mind. Because if you run any other business in the world, you will love it when rich white people come in, because that's how you sell stuff.
But when you say that, though, that's like a bit almost in of itself. Like
but
it's like an idea. It doesn't go well, though.
No,
does it go well?
It doesn't go well at all. It's a bad idea. It's just for my ego, and I guess a little of them are like, yeah, we are rich. I think they like being called rich and white, but then they're like, but I don't think they ever can comprehend it. Because they're all business owners. A lot of times I really dig on it. I go, most of you guys own businesses. Now check this out. How crazy is this? Just think, you in your life would never discourage rich white people to come into your business. And as comics, you're the last motherfuckers we want to walk through that door. So it's this hit home on this, because it's a rant I've done 3 or 4 times. It never goes good. as fucking genius of a bit and as much as I believe it's true and like an outlier, it never goes good. Whereas it goes much better when I just go, oh boy, that joke really bombed. Well, like then when you're vulnerable and like self-deprecating, that always gets a laugh. But when you yell at them, I don't think yelling at them. Some crowds, I guess, like to be yelled at, but I don't know. But I think that way that I do it is
it's
bad.
An art.
Yeah,
it's an art, right? Like the thing about saying like, oh, that bombed, or oh, you guys didn't like that one. Okay. Oh, cross that one off the list, whatever. The thing about that is you can really only do that once.
Yeah.
Like if you start doing it like 2 or 3 times, like it's not going to be funny anymore. They're just like, Jesus, why didn't this guy write jokes?
Yeah.
Crowd likes,
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I guess you can get away with it once, but yeah, to go back to the other thing, now that I think about it more, for some reason, I guess when I yelled at crowds, I guess just that one bit that I like to do, which I try not to do anymore, doesn't work. But sometimes if you give them a little shit, it does work.
Oh yeah, no, like so there's like risks to both, right? Like the risk to not acknowledging it, like if a crowd sucks and you not telling them, the risk is that you're just the rest of your set's gonna be really flat and nothing's gonna change, and they're gonna think the whole time like, why didn't that comedian acknowledge how poorly it was going? Like, isn't that weird? And then they're distracted because they're like, they can't think about what you're saying. All they can think about is why aren't they saying what we're thinking, which is that this sucks.
Yeah.
So that's like the risk, right? But then the other risk is that if you go, like, if you're too sensitive and you're like, you expect like standing ovations for every joke, and you start going in on the crowd immediately, like I think we both know comics like that. It just can't wait to get on the crowd. They're like, well, what are you talking? We thought you were funny. Why are you mad at us?
Yeah.
What do you want from us? So it's like an art. You feel it out, I think, and
Well, that's a great point. That made me think of something else. If you're gonna tell the crowd they're shitty, you should only do that as a headliner. Like if I was headlining and then you were featuring, I would not be in a big hurry for you to be like, you guys suck. This crowd sucks.
Yeah.
So
because we've both been in the back of the room headlining, and then had a feature or opener or guest set even more egregious. But and you hear from the green room or something like, man, you guys suck. What is your problem? And they're like, no, man, you suck.
Yeah.
You suck. Just stop and let me try at least. And maybe by some miracle, the crowd will snap into shape with a comedian who's prepared, but like, there's nothing worse than hearing that before you go on stage, because then you go, okay, well, I guess I know where this is going tonight.
Now I got to dig out of your hole. And
it's immediately like an adversarial relationship. And sometimes it's not that hard to dig out of the hole, right?
No.
You're just so relieved that the confrontational person is gone that you can.
And sometimes you can go, you guys are right. That person sucked. That's an easy pandering one. If you don't know I'd say
I'll throw them under the bus every time. Every time.
Yes. Well, I won't throw them under the bus, but sometimes there's this middle room of comedy that I definitely felt during this quarantine where you're just like friends with people, but just because you kind of fucking have to be friends with, I guess you don't have to, but you just know they're going to be around. There's people in my scenes, any scene I've ever been in, it's like, we know we don't like each other, but it doesn't. So for that, I would just let it. But if it's my friend that eats it, and then they say the crowd sucks, that's the best. And I can really go, oh no, you guys were so right about that, dude. That's like a cheat code of pandering. If someone bombs in front of me, and then I can just go, man, he was fucking the worst, right? And they'll be like, yeah, like I don't know if he'll ever even come back. And then you got to hopefully when it's your friends, like if I bombed in front of you, I would expect you to do that. And that'd be fun for me. But that kind of stuff. But I do think you should definitely know your position. If you're a host, guest, or headline, or host, guest, feature, and you're eating it, first of all, just try to get through your time, get to the headliner, and then maybe be a little more vulnerable and make fun of yourself than just shit on the crowd.
So that's a great point that I hadn't even considered when we were talking about this topic. But yeah, for sure, like consider the order, and you know, you don't want to be like, definitely you don't want like a reputation for being the comic that always pisses off the crowd or submarines the show, or like, because then people see you're on it and like, oh Jesus Christ, there we go.
Well, and the bookers will quit putting you on.
Well, yeah, that's the quick way to not get booked too. But like, the only, okay, so then the counter argument or whatever, and the reason why I kind of think about this all the time is because I was talking to this great comedian named Ryan Hamilton one time in Utah at the Wise Guys, and he'd come from a corporate show that he just did, and he was talking about how it didn't go that well or whatever. But his advice for corporate shows, at least, he's like, I never let them know that it's not going well. He's like, I never say, oh, you guys didn't like that one, or like, come on guys, let's get some energy go, you know, whatever. He's like, I always just act like I'm crushing for those people, because he's like, most of those people have never been to a comedy club, they're never going to go to a comedy club, they don't know what it sounds like, they don't. So then I do my show, I act like I'm killing, and then afterward people come up and go, that's the funniest thing we've ever seen, you were incredible. And he's like, and I get booked again every time. But then comics who go in and they sweat it, and they tell the crowd like, you guys are not reacting the way you should be, it puts it on, makes them uncomfortable, and then they're like, yeah, that was okay, but you know, we didn't like when the comedian got mad at us for not laughing enough,
which is,
or whatever. And again, that's a different thing. It might be different because like that's a corporate show environment or whatever, so we're kind of getting in the weeds. But I always think about that. And then the other place to think about that is with like television sets, because there's, if you're doing like a 5-minute set or something, and your first joke doesn't hit like you were hoping it would, it takes a lot of balls to point that out.
yeah.
And then you better hope that you break the tension perfectly and maneuver back into the rest of your set like really artfully. Otherwise, I think most people are just going to be like, the best thing you could do is act like that first joke killed and move on to your next and just hope that it picks up from there, you know?
Yeah, well, that's great advice from Ryan Hamilton, who's one of the best comics working. And it's crazy. That just shows how shitty corporate shows are. Because I think you'd see Ryan Hamilton 100 out of 100 times and he would crush in a comedy club.
And
but
I'm sure he was doing great by like his standards, you know, like.
But I definitely do that too much at a corporate gig. That was good advice for me, because at a corporate gig, I expect the audience to be like a comedy club. And then I bet you out of the 25 corporate gigs, I yelled at them 23 times, try to yell at them into shape, which shows why I don't think I've ever got booked again. I mean, Ryan Hamilton.
Imagine, you know, like on people's websites, and they do like corporate shows, and then they have little blurbs from people who've been to the show, like in quotes, you know, and that would be yours. It's like, I've done 25 shows, and in 23 of them, I yelled at everybody.
You know what? I had a strategy for the last one. It didn't go good, but I said, hey, these corporate shows are weird. I want to have fun. We're going to talk like adults. Here's what I want you guys to do. I want you to turn to the person next to you and just make up a fucking name and introduce yourself as someone new. And let's just pretend like we don't know each other. And let's just have a good time tonight, instead of seeing if the boss laughs at this or if who's. That's what is hard about corporate shows. They all know each other. So if you do any joke with any kind of risk, then you're like, oh. I mean, I got into a fight with a magician about this one time because he was doing the corporate scene in Wyoming after me. And he sent me a fucking email like, I don't know, all these, it was like he was like, I don't know, all these corporate people are like fucking, they're over like comedians because like it always goes bad. I go, yeah, because you're a fucking magician. You don't have a Trump trick, you fucking dork. I said, you play it safe, you're fucking nerd. I got so mad because I was like, yeah, we get in trouble sometimes because we take chances and there's some risk in our job. You have like 7 tricks, you fucking nerds. But that's just my own rant about. But that's the difference. That's the corporate thing. Is like, I'm glad you told me that. And I'm gonna try to stick with that, with what Ryan Hamilton said. Just keep crushing. But those are.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's like it's just like I just think this whole thing. It's a fine line between, you always want to project control and confidence, you know, and like, you know, you've done this a billion times, you know exactly how to land this plane, nobody has to worry, right? But then anytime you acknowledge something's going bad, you have to be able, I think the key is like, it's good to be present. It's good to be in the moment. It's good to like, the fire alarm goes off. You shouldn't just ignore it. You should say the fire alarm is, you know what I mean? Like you have to
Yeah, you
address
have to.
things as they happen. You have to, and you have to be in the moment enough to be
Well,
able to do that.
so I think your landing the plane analogy is perfect. So then if you're flying and you hit some turbulence, sometimes the captain has to come on and go, okay, that's a little rough right here, but
Right.
we're fine. We're going to get out of this.
But
And
the
that,
key is to know how bad the turbulence has to be to make the announcement, because you also don't want to come on with a tiny little bit of turbulence and say,
yeah,
hey, don't worry, everybody. And now everybody's fucking worried. They
yeah,
weren't worried
yeah.
before, right? So you have to
Well,
know.
that's another mistake I make is sometimes how the room's set up or something, or let's say you do comedy clubs, like we're spoiled here at Comedy Works, the crowd is so great. And then sometimes, countless times, I thought I was bombing when I really wasn't. And then
Right.
that's a bad look to be like, oh, we're not doing good. And then people are like, you were doing fine. What? And then it's like, I agree that would be, I think that's an even bigger mistake than when I yell at the crowd is when I just pouty bomb when I'm not even bombing, when I just act like a little bitch and like, oh, you guys aren't very fun. And they're like, we're having fun. What are you doing?
That's what I mean. So I think that's what the art of it is like learning. And it's, no matter what, you're going to get it wrong a lot of times because it's just such a fine line. But like learning when to acknowledge something going poorly because it actually is,
Mm-hmm.
and when to go, no, I'm doing good. It's just there's a few factors in here or whatever that's maybe it's not, I'm not getting the reaction that I need, but I'm not going to just like wallow in it and like continue to bring up, like be pissed off. I'm just going to do my show the best I can,
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think? It's like crowd work kind of, it'll happen and you'll get a feel
Yeah,
for
it's kind of like crowd work, except because obviously, like if a naked mental patient runs in the room, like of course you got to talk about it. Like there's nobody in their right mind would try to just keep going with their show. So there's the
Yeah.
obvious ones, but where it gets tricky, I'd say, is like when you do a joke and it just kind of gets a laugh, right? Where you're expecting a big laugh. It's like, what do you do there? Now if it keeps happening, do you like go, all right, guys, what's going on? What's the problem? Did everybody's dog die or something? Whatever. Or do you just go, I'm just going to be, keep it straight
I got a
and just
good
do my
story
best and finish the show?
I got a good story for you. Last time I headlining Comedy Works, so dead center, I do kind of a risky joke. This girl gets up in the middle of the joke, right? Walks out. So I'm like, okay, just plow through. Don't acknowledge it. It is dead center front row, but okay, that joke maybe not for everyone. So then I tell another couple jokes. The girl that was sitting in the next spot gets to her. She gets up, fucking walks out, right? So now I'm like, oh shit. So then I keep going. I just ignore that. Then another one of those girls comes back, whispers in the two people next to them. They all three get up and walk out. So now I just fucking go off and go, this is what comedy is now. I'm fucking I took some chances. I don't know. I don't want to pander. I yelled at the crowd, right? I really yelled at these people. When the girl left her scarf, I picked it up and fucking mocked it or whatever. Come to find out, that girl that got up during the first joke, like got out of surgery that day, fucking fell down in the hallway on her head, almost died, fell down in the corner of like the back of the comedy club where no one really is. Luckily, a comic like saw her, caught her, hit her head, blood all over. So her friend goes to check on her.
Oh my God.
Then her friend comes back. So my girlfriend's in the back. People in the back know what's going on because there's ambulances and everyone, fire trucks are there and shit. I see the fucking manager of the comedy club come in, see me look at me on stage, like what, like kind of looking over the room. I'm like, oh fuck, now I'm in trouble with the manager. All hell breaks loose. I'm about to spiral out of control and be like, I guess I'll never work here again because you crowds are such pussies and we can't do comedy anymore. And then I come off stage and everyone's like, dude, you were doing great. Everything's fine. That girl just almost died and her friends, they like ambulance. Her emergency contacts were in the first row. And I was like, oh God, I didn't sell any merch. because I was because I yelled at everybody. So in the moment, I should have just maybe acknowledged it and been like, "Oh, hey, what happened? You didn't, or I did that joke."
Yeah,
Maybe someone could have just told me, but I don't know about
no,
the full yelling at the crowd. I think maybe just one comment, and then they'll giggle a little, and then what I do, and try not to do anymore, is keep when they. I think when I get disappointed that they don't like my jokes, and then I like turn mean, bad idea.
well, that's where uh I think like if a whole front row eventually leaves, like that's in a situation closer to the mental patient coming in where it's probably time to like acknowledge it. You can't just
Yeah,
not say anything. Like if one person rushes out 99 times out of 100, they got a phone call or they got to go to the bathroom or something, but it has nothing to do with your comedy, right? But yeah, if like the whole row leaves, something's going on and you might want to know what it is. Most times it's going to be something funny you can make fun of, but I think it's like the mistake you made there is like jumping to the conclusion that they were offended, and maybe it
yeah,
was because of the timing of the joke where she got up and walked out on you were already like other people have, like you said, it was
yeah,
like a risky joke or whatever. But yeah, I think that's where like maybe that's the lesson is like don't ever assume you know why a crowd is reacting exactly, or like certain crowd members are reacting exactly like they are, because there's like 1,000. We always think it through our prism where they're thinking about everything we're saying 100% of the time, and any reaction they have is because of us. A lot of times there's things happening in their lives like seeing the comedian is like the fifth thing they're thinking about right now. Like they got all this other shit going on in their life.
Well, the other part was then I shit on that lady for getting
After
up and leaving.
once you saw her in the
And
ambulance.
then at the end, everyone's like, why is there ambulance and fire trucks? They're like, oh, that lady that he's been making fun of, and he was rubbing her scarf on his balls and shit. That lady's in the ambulance right now. So again, I didn't sell any fucking merch at all. I mean, it's just a brutal night
Yeah.
of and
You
then
were
the
the
goal
real
was
victim.
to make an extra $100. But yeah, I think the yelling at him thing, that should just be a short jab. Would be my advice on that. Is just you can jab him a little bit and give him a little poke the bear. But sometimes, because if they do turn into a bear as one, then you're really fucked. If
Yeah.
you poke the whole audience, then. But I think the best is just when you, like you said, just be like plow through, and then a lot of it's just timing in your set and stuff, and like again being something we talk about a lot on here, just respecting the order of where you're at. I just don't want if your last joke is struggling and you're opening for me, just fucking get to the finish line. Don't if
Yeah.
you're at the last 50 meters and someone says, hey man, you run like a dumbass, just go, okay, I'll just let me cross the finish line. I don't need to stop and argue with them. When I like a lot of it is just the respect for, to me, the people ahead of you. Like I would as a headliner, I'd appreciate that more. I mean, like I would say to my feature, like, hey, I know that was weird at the end, but I really thought you handled it good. And thank you for not, and the headliner will have you, if like that's happened at the end of my set, if you don't address it and you're mean to the people in front of me, sometimes I'll come out and be like, hey man, you guys sucked, or that was shitty. And then I got your back.
Yeah. No, I think that's all right. And again, so I think we talked about like, and sometimes it matters on the situation, the type of show, the how what you're getting paid for the show, all that stuff factors in, type of audience. But then also like, I what I was thinking of just now is like showcases. Like eventually you'll do like showcases for Just
Yeah.
for Laughs or other
Headliner night or
festivals or
promotion night or
TV shows or what's
somebody's
that?
importance there.
Yeah. You'll think someone's really important is in the audience, or agents and managers or whatever, people who matter. And I think like that's the situation where the stakes are up, right? And then you go, okay, well, what happens then? What happens if my first two jokes bomb? Then do I address it? Do I lean into it? And some comics, I think what some comics do, I think in the extreme cases you should, right? You should
Yeah.
acknowledge it and just hope that you're clever and smart enough to win them back by doing that, right? But some comics, what I see happen is they go into that situation kind of hoping for something weird to happen, or like they want it to go haywire because of either nerves or they don't trust the material enough or
Mhm.
whatever it is, or they want to be different enough from the rest of the show. So they want to show like they're improvisational or something. But man, can that go south too? Like, so I wouldn't like, don't do it premeditated, like don't be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, oh man, this crowd's going to hate me, or I'm not for these industry people. So then my first joke doesn't get the laugh I want. And then immediately you fly off the handle or whatever. Cause I don't think that's like what anybody's looking for either.
Yeah. The times I think about when you yell at the crowd is like when you're at open mics. When you're going to get better, and then a little, sometimes if I go to open mic, then I have to go, hey, what the fuck's wrong with you guys? Can you hear me? Or like, I
Right.
think that is the time when you yell at the crowd. When people have paid money and you have a boss and shit, I'd be really careful yelling at the crowd. And actually, I'm lucky that I've got out of it pretty unscathed, but I guess I haven't, because I never get rebooked on these corporate gigs, which are a lot of money, which could have made my life a lot better. So taking from my own advice, and again, why I always love doing this show is I'll be thinking of what you said and Ryan Hamilton said these next couple times. Maybe acknowledge it just a little, but then also sometimes just plow through it. I think I'm going to try to
But
be
yeah,
done yelling at the crowds.
yeah. But I mean, but again, just to put the counter on that, and then we can wrap up. But I think I tend to go the other way to my detriment sometimes, especially when I started. Like when I started, I did not want to interact with the crowd at all. It was like a last resort, and I'd be doing some casino or something, and people are like awful, and it's not going well. But instead of like saying, "Hey, what's the problem? Are you guys tired, or did you guys all lose, or trying to talk to them or
Yeah.
something?" And acknowledging that this isn't going well, I would just like retreat into a shell and just like basically robot out my material and wait till the time was up so I could get out of there. Because it was like
Yeah.
to me the least risky proposition, and I think that's not good either. So like there is like a fine line and an art to it.
Well, I think you nailed it right there. And it goes back to what you're talking about moving on stage is when you just plow through, you kind of robot out, which is the last thing that you want as a performer, is to be a robot up there where the crowd can be like, oh, I can look away and come back. It's just a
Right.
robot doing the robot shit. So I think you're right. Like that's a perfect example in the casino. Countless times I'd be after like, hey, were you guys at the pool all day? Are we in food comments? Everyone coming from the buffet? That the more friendlier, and you can tag that on to, oh man, that didn't go good, or you guys, I think I think this would
Yeah,
just,
but it just showing that you're like, I'm a human being. I'm noticing what's going on. I see shit like you guys see shit. This isn't like I'm not just a recording up here. Anytime you can do that, that's good. But what you don't want to do, I think, is just do too much of the like, this sucks. This, you guys suck. I suck. Everything. Why are we even here? What are we even doing? Like, if you go that well, like too many times or even at all when they're not feeling that way, that can really turn the crowd off too.
yeah.
So I guess there's no good answer except for like you just got to feel
No,
it
I
out.
think you nailed it. Like acknowledge it. Playful is better. Self-deprecating is better. Occasionally, the more you do it, you can you can yell at them a little bit. I would say from my experience, yelling a lot is what I would avoid, being that comic like that I can be sometimes when it's like totally their fault. Because again, if I'm being honest, sometimes on the drive through, I'd be like, or drive home, I'm like, yeah, it was their fault, but it was also, because some comics will say it's never the crowd's fault. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but I know comics
Right.
that are always say it's never the comic's fault, it's your fault. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I would say
debatable.
if you see an ambulance like those flashing lights, just give them the benefit of the doubt. That
Yeah.
would be my rule going forward. But
Yeah. Just be nice. Have fun on stage. Make it fun. Do not do what I do. Do not yell at anybody during crowd work, during your bombing. Just get better. And that's what I need to do. That's for me. But for all you guys, I think, like you said, just stay in the moment, acknowledge it, be funny. Just always be funny. Try to make it funny.
yeah, I mean that's good advice whenever.
Yeah.
And yeah, just
So
don't
yeah.
like don't tell them you're bombing when they don't think you're bombing either.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
another one.
that's like a golden rule. Like, don't ever bring up the idea of bombing when they weren't thinking about it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, don't.
you know, you want to have an accurate gauge. That's why you want to really have good, like, people talk about laugh ears or whatever. Like, what that means, like, sometimes new comics think they're getting big laughs that they're not getting, you know. But you want to have it the other way too, where you don't want to be deaf to the laugh. You don't want to think you're bombing when you're not, because then you're gonna like be mad at audiences you shouldn't be mad at. So it's like I said, it's like a fine line.
Yeah,
But be cognizant of it.
Yeah, and just, I mean, again, the mistakes I made is just that. I think coming from a comedy clubs are built for laughter and stuff. And then if I don't get that many corporates, so I get one every, let's say, 3 or 4 months. And then I come from doing all these great comedy shows to a giant hotel ballroom and shit where I don't get the energy that I get from a comedy club. And then I start pouting or I start talking shit to them when you're right. For half the time, they don't even know that they're not a good audience. They've never been to a comedy club, and I'm not doing that bad. And me telling them I'm doing bad, they go, well, we didn't think you were doing bad till you said you're doing bad. Then we were like, yeah, I guess maybe he is doing bad.
That's such a good point too, because it's like, you know, it's kind of like stocks. You know, sometimes like you see a stock and then you go, oh, you know, but what if they're, you know, there's going to be a Super Bowl and then like these like MGM or something. You're like, and then everyone's going to bet on the Super Bowl, so it's going to go way up. But it's like the smart people have already priced in all the anything you're thinking about. Like the people they've priced that into whatever the price of the stock is, so they know. So you have to do the same thing with like rooms basically, or shows. You got to price in the laughs that you expect. So when you walk into Comedy Works and it's sold out and it's the early show and there's no drunk people, like you're expecting through the roof as good as set as you're probably going to have in your like in the wheelhouse, right? But like you said, when you walk into the Marriott ballroom and it's a bunch of circular tables, you know, 25 feet apart from each other, and it's a 10-foot stage and one of those, you know, echoey mics, and everyone's eating dinner. In my head, I'm pricing in, this is going to be high degree of difficulty. I'm not expecting a lot. And so I have to lower my tolerance for when I go, hey guys, what's wrong? You know what I mean? I would say, hey guys, what's wrong? If I was getting the laughs at the Comedy Works that I was getting at the Marriott, I would have to go, wait, what's going on? What happened? You know, but I'm not going to do that same reaction if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's really obvious, but it is something.
Yeah, but no, I mean, it should be obvious, but like I said, I make that mistake a lot because you just get spoiled sometimes, or when you do good shows and then when a room's not built for comedy and you're just used to, you know, those ballrooms, looking back on it, you know, those ballrooms, I got to take that into the equation of like, do not address that you're not doing as good as you are usually doing, because the room's not built for you to do as good as you're usually. You can't possibly do that good. So just plow through, like Ryan Hamilton said, and you don't overthink it. And you're probably doing much better than you think you are. So don't.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people will come up to you after a show and be like, oh my God, that was so great. And you're like, really?
Yeah.
What show were you watching? But then you should just take that compliment. You should go, thank you. That was great.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully that answers some of your questions. Again, it's I mean, like a lot of this is just gonna be a case by case thing, and it's just as generic as advice as we always give. It's just getting on stage and writing as much as you can, because the more you get in these situations, the more you're gonna feel out which lane it works best for you. But we're just trying to give you, so those first couple times you have an idea. Hopefully, you know, after these episodes you think about it, and then this will happen to you, and then you'll go, okay, this is what I did. I'll go, oh, I remember Brant and Andrew talked about this. I had that happen tonight. Did I do what Brant and Andrew said? Yes. Oh, that didn't work out. Or did I do what they said? I'm glad I listened to that. Or did I not do what they said, and it you know, maybe I should have, or something. I think that's what, you know, well, again, something I always say in this shit, there's no rules. There's just like reps, and every situation is going to be different, but we're just trying to help you prepare for those situations to survive them and do the best you can. So yeah.
That
All
sounds
right.
good to me.
Well, that's it for this week. Please subscribe, rate, review. Keep telling your friends. The nothing does better than word of mouth. So if you guys are enjoying the show and you know some young comics, or if you're involved in comedy at all, people without a doubt every day are going to come up and tell you, I want to be a comic. How do I do comedy? Just so you don't have to tell them a bunch of bullshit. Just send them right here. Say there's a perfect podcast, and they will answer all your questions. And if they haven't answered your question yet, reach out to them and they will get to it. So that's it for this week. I am Brant Tobler.
I'm Andrew Slater.
We will see you next week. Bye-bye.